Hello everyone, welcome to Insight. I am Namdi Odipo. With each passing day, the stark reality of how the coronavirus pandemic has changed our world hits me in the face. I mean, there are no current football or tennis matches to watch. I cannot even go to any of my favorite places. I've always been a man of simple taste, but current times have made living seemingly simple, yet frustrating for all of us. In our previous episode, we brought you an account of a coronavirus survivor. On this episode, we will bring you another account from another survivor. And in our interview segment, we speak with someone with first-hand experience on how the federal government is handling the deployment of palliatives to the vulnerable across the country to cushion the economic effects of the pandemic in Nigeria. My colleague Elizabeth Omori is also on standby for the media review segment. Elizabeth?
Well, today we shall be taking a look at the role of the social media in the containment of COVID-19. Well, since December last year that the virus broke out, the social media space has been awash with different messages, videos, from musicals to skits and all that. But what exactly is the role of the social media in the containment of COVID-19? That will be our focus on the media review segment.
Very well, but let's proceed with the discussion segment. The ongoing global campaign against COVID-19 is indeed a war. And in this war, those who fought and survived are veterans with plenty of stakes yet in the raging battle. I caught up with one of them earlier, and it was quite an interview. Right Honorable Francis Okiye, Speaker, Edo State House of Assembly, welcome to Insight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
I must congratulate you, Mr. Speaker, on your recovery. You're quite the advocate for early testing, and you have often used your experience as a case study. Tell me, even though our national testing capacity at the moment is improving by the day, how critical is it for us to accelerate large-scale testing?
Well, from what you are saying, there is already a preemptive thought out that we're going to have a large number, but that's not where I'm going to take it from. I'm looking at the one person that is infested should be known that is infested, and then through testing, and then treatment or whatever advice that must go with it should commence immediately. So it is not a matter of the large-scale testing, but that everybody will understand early testing, early discovery of your status, is a prerequisite to guarantee healing.
How did I help you, particularly in your case?
Yeah, well, I came in from the United Kingdom. And while in London, the discussion was the order of the day. So, at every fair, it was all about what's happening this coronavirus and how it relates to Africa. So even while there, I was making calls. I was always in contact with my people in Nigeria and other parts of the Africa. And what the common thing we agreed on was that since the coronavirus is not quite with the high temperature, so Africa might be a better place. That very soon Africa will be a tourist zone. So we're looking at all this, and what this entails that the sun in Africa is very hot, the weather is hot, and two, Africa is closer to nature. We're not used to processed food as much as it is done in the West, and our capacity to resist external invasion in terms of disease is higher than what we think about the West. So it is all about the thinking and the talking. So my prayer was, in fact, in some of the arguments, some doctors don't believe that we are carrying out enough tests. That's why we are not experiencing a huge number. But at the end of the argument, we always ask, but there are no deaths. There are no significant deaths that will make us get frightened. So all these were the discussions then, and they form my background opinion on what one should do in case you are a victim of this virus. So when I came in and I knew that I was going to go on self-isolation, I was going to stay away from everybody, including my family. So I knew that I hope I don't have it. In the morning of when I flew to Nigeria, I was tested in one of the hospitals because I went for my medication, though the preliminary testing, and there was no sign of the virus. So I flew and I got to Nigeria, but I was very careful, either not to contact it from anybody or not to transmit it to anybody. So these were my position. And I got home. Before coming, through the internet and the other discussions, we were also, getting informed about how to inhale this heat, the Nigerian style malaria treatment, which is the agbo, and the components. The components can be richer. We really were engrossed with the discussion of how does one climb within the African zone affects or influence what you put together as a component, the ingredients of this agbo. And I was sharing some of these things with my wife. As I was coming in, I told my wife to get all those things prepared because we need to be.
I will interrupt you, because we'll get to talk about that much later when we'll talk about your case management. But let me quickly go to the state of your mind upon learning that you have eventually tested positive to COVID-19. How did that news affect you? I mean, psychologically, what was the state of your mind when you got this news?
Well, when I came back to Nigeria and I got home, I told my wife I was going on self-isolation. I was going to be completely off, the contact with everybody, including herself. And my children wanted to embrace me when I was coming in, and I stopped them because I was on mask. And I see if something else had gone wrong. So, but it was like dramatizing a scenario. They didn't believe me. They were saying, Daddy, but what's wrong? I said, well, that's what it takes. So when I saw that, my wife sometimes was not even accepting the fact that she should be so careful by tiptoeing to get into the room. She must knock. She must be sure that I'm masked. She is masked. So, and I felt there was need for me to understand my status. So that was when I actually called the Commissioner for Health, that I just came in from the pandemic zone and I need to be tested to understand my status. And I'm going on self-isolation. So he visited me and he saw where I was. I told him, well, I had prepared myself by, preparing the room. It was going to be warm. The air condition was put off, and all the ingredients that I had on me. So he picked up the sample and went on with those things, like taking agbo, steaming myself, inhaling it hot, with a lot of ingredients and spices, awaiting the result. So when the result came and he called me to say I was positive, honestly, I was destabilized. That was when I was really, taking it to myself. I realized that I had lost my balance. I had to share it with my wife, that she can be courageous and understand that this business of being in isolation and treatment is a serious one. She felt it also at the moment, immediately, but over time, we had to accept the reality. So the team of doctors came and they prescribed their own orthodox medication. They saw me already, be engrossed with all possible treatment, anything that can come, because we're deploying everything possible into it.
Well, we're going to come to the issue of how you blended traditional medicine with modern medicine, that's orthodox medicine. But let me very quickly ask you this. What was the most severe symptom that you had, that you experienced at that point in time?
Well, before I was tested positive, the result came out, I didn't really have symptoms. In fact, before I asked for the test, there was no symptom. But because of waiting for the test result to come out, I had mild cough, just mild, slight one.
Okay.
Because I was not very conscious of my body, listening to myself. I had mild cough. But when I started the medication recommended by the doctors and also steaming myself with this agbo, staying in the heat, even when I'm sweating, I will not put on the AC. The only thing we do once in a while is to make sure the windows are ventilated. So I started, at some point, I was restless. I was restless, not knowing what was wrong. The doctors were coming around to check, and they said there's no problem with me, but I was restless. And then at some point, they suggested moving me to isolation center at Irua, and eventually I came in, but I got there, the place wasn't a better place for me to stay, so I had to come back home. And everybody was giving me consolation messages. My friends were calling me. My wife was there.
Yeah.
The Christian communities, they were pastors. Everybody was talking, praying for me. The government officials were reaching out to me. The governor, the deputy governor, and all of them. My colleagues in the house. So we had all these together. But that restlessness, they checked my lungs and said none of my organ was compromised. I should take it easy. So some of the drugs were stepped down. They were stepped down to check whether I was actually reacting to drugs and all that. But all these things were happening while the process of treatment was going on. And eventually I got stabilized. And after about 6 days of the treatment, I knew that I was going to survive. So my lungs were not attacked. My heart was working well. But just need to complete the doses, complete the cycle before it was carried out.
In less than 5 minutes that we've talked, you and I noticed the number of times that you've mentioned your wife. She must have been a solid support base for you during this ordeal. I mean, yes, you slipped into some sort of depression at the time. Did she also slip into some sort of depression at the time as well, while managing you?
In terms of psychological application, I can tell you that my wife is stronger than I do. My wife has a very strong character to resist pressure, and even when it's as bad as the world is falling down, she's able to stabilize and manage it without, giving away, her impression. So she's a very strong woman. She took all of this thing by force, as if by power, by force, this thing must go down. And then the various succumb to the pressure.
Were members of your family tested as well? And what was the outcome of the results of the test? Sorry.
Yeah, they did. They did twice.
Okay.
After I was tested positive, their samples were taken as well, and then they ran through the test, and it was negative. So midway to my treatment, before my first negative test, they were tested again, and it was negative.
I am quite fascinated with your case management, and earlier on you mentioned how you used some traditional herbs. But let me ask you this: how did you? And of course, there's also ongoing research right now. We do know that some states are carrying out research on the applicability or application, I beg your pardon, of traditional medicine in managing COVID-19. How were you able to get medical consent to mix modern medicine and traditional medicine in your case?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the background of the philosophy of this, virus. That the entire world had agreed that there is no potent medicine at the moment. So, out of desperation, survival at this time, I had to take my destiny into my hand. I wasn't waiting for the doctor to recommend anything. I'm used to taking agbo. I'm used to steaming it because I grew up from a community where all these things were applied. So I know that they work. So as long as they are not going to be counterproductive to myself, it was like acting on the side of surplusage. A lot were put in. I'm used to some of those medications before, traditional and the herbs and the spices, and that if they don't work, it can only stop at not working. But my wife was also coming up with some few things. So it was all about how to get well.
And there's so much myth about coronavirus, and we wouldn't want to encourage people to, without medical advice, to go ahead and use certain things that might put them or endanger their health. But in your case, traditional medicine was applied, and we've seen the results. Of course, in addition to what the doctors managing your case also prescribed for you. You've described some of your experiences and the ordeal you went through while you were experiencing the initial symptoms, and how you fared. But let me ask you this, because there are not enough findings right now to confirm that antibodies from persons like yourself or patients who have recovered is enough to keep you from getting reinfected. Are you concerned about getting reinfected? What are you doing not to get reinfected?
Yeah, well, first of all, at the inception, I'm talking of my coming into the country. From the airport in Lagos, I see everybody as a possible patient, carrier of this virus. I see myself assumed to have had it, and I must try to do everything not to transmit it to other persons. I must tell you, this position still remains very, very active in me, even as we speak. Because I hardly allow visitors to come in without, first of all, sanitizing, washing their hands. And if you don't have a face mask, I'm not going to come close to you for any discussion. So I'm very conscious that these things can spread to because there's really no very clearly defined mode of transmitting. So it's been a guesswork. It can go through the air, it can be by touching and all that. So all of it has to be avoided. And I'm very, very concerned. In fact, at the initial stage, I really wanted to talk because I feel there's so much in me to share, from the beginning. But one thing is very sacrosanct about my own case. I came in, I went into self-isolation.
Okay.
From the airport in Lagos till I got to my house in Benin. I was conscious about contacts with people. And to God be the glory, as I speak with you, there was no singular human being. In fact, my colleagues in the office, we were supposed to meet, there was supposed to be parties. I told them I was putting off every social event. I wasn't going to see anybody, and I wasn't going to encourage them to come to see me, that I was fine and safe, and I felt I was safe staying alone. All through the 2 weeks or so, but yes, 15 days I stayed in isolation or something, I was all alone. The only person that could reach me was my wife, and then and doctors. Every other discussion with anybody, they visit my house, they talk to me through the intercom.
Good to know. Good to know. In spite of all we know about the virus and how it has impacted in the world, and all of the details that we have so far on the virus, and of course we do know that new things and information emanates each day, each waking day or working day or passing day. I beg your pardon. There is the issue, and it's quite critical to the subject matter of stigmatization. You're a high-profile Nigerian, so you just may not get as much as the next guy, but we do know that stigmatization is an issue, really. What's your thoughts on that matter, on this subject matter of stigmatization?
Well, very unfortunately, I didn't know that the stigmatization would be this high in the mind of our people until I heard it and I came out. It's going to be a very, very critical element if Nigeria must survive this trend. Because I'm really surprised why people should think that to stigmatize others. This is more like an airborne disease that anybody can be very unlucky to have it. So it's not a product of an immoral dealings or crime. It's not a product of whether you are a saint or you are a devil. So anybody can have it. Now we come back to the element of stigmatization. I found that why people became conscious of that stigmatization aspect is when this isolation, taken to isolation, which must be taken away from the people, became the campaign, not the virus. You see, the campaign should be limited to not contact the virus and what you do not to contact it. But anybody that has, just submit yourself for treatment. It is curable. You can survive it if you discover it early enough and report. But let us de-emphasize how the person should be moved away from where people are, how he should be moved to an isolation center, how he should not be seen within that. No, let us reduce that as a campaign strategy. That's the point. Because you cannot cheat nature. If you make the world to believe that a patient with coronavirus should be taken away from where the people are, taken away from where a human being is. Isolation should be built far off at the extreme end of a human occupation. Then you have left a mark in the mind of that person. Psychologically, you have told him who has it must be somebody that has to be taken away from where you are, or you should get away from where he is. Let us de-emphasize that campaign, that part of the campaign. We must find a midway, to let people know that your contact with people and make them infected. But you are still a normal human being. You just need to know you have it and obey the rule, and then you get out of it. So we must find a midway. I'm not saying that we must remove the isolation center, no, but we must de-emphasize the campaign of isolation center as if that is the medicine.
Okay.
It is not. These are procedural. Where you can stay to get treated.
Indeed. I mean, your speaker. You're Speaker Edo State House of Assembly, you're a lawmaker at the state level. Do you think it might get to a point when we might have to make, or you might as lawmakers have to make relevant legislations against discrimination of patients who suffer from sicknesses or diseases, or perhaps like the coronavirus in this instance? Like we have for HIV/AIDS, for instance.
Let me tell you how concerned our house is. If you recall, very recently, members come together to put some money together to donate some items. It is not the quantity or the quality of that item that was the issue, but to show compassion that the state government is doing something and we are in it together. Mind you, we have only 10 constituencies that are represented right now in the House, in the state where there are supposed to be 24 constituencies. So if we take it upon as an individual, those constituencies that have not been represented will not have the opportunity to benefit from what we are doing. So hence we decide to push what we have from the people of the widow's mite through the state government. We did that to show that we are concerned. We're going to do a lot. We have even donated one salary towards this cause, maybe small, but that's what we can do at the moment. Now, a lot will be done. I asked the legal department in the House to go into research to find out when we made the law against stigmatization on HIV patients, whether the elements there can cover what we are experiencing right now.
Okay.
If we are not convinced that it can protect the victims of this coronavirus, then we are likely going to amend that law to expand it in a way that it can accommodate the dropout of this coronavirus. We are doing that, and we have also assured the governor that anything he wants us to do, within the confine of legislation, we are ready to do it without delay. And we will give our support by not delaying if we must pass a law, a piece of legislation that will support this trend to help our country and our people.
I'd like your say, and very quickly too, on two issues, but I'll take the first one first. Let me take the first one. What do you say to people who still believe, or rather who do not believe, that coronavirus is actually for real? I mean, who consider it a sham? I'd like your thoughts on that first.
Well, I think the approach the government is doing is not only a direct implication, it has some indirect implication. I give you an example. When a government imposes a touch to down curfew, or a government imposes a lockdown within a period, and our Nigerian illiterates found that they cannot move, they will ask, what is going on? Why can't we go out? Why is everybody shut down at home? No matter how local, no matter how deprived you are, those questions must arise. Why is everywhere shut down? Why can't I visit my person? Then you'll be told that there's a disease in circulation and it has no medication for curing. So that is one way of the government operation. It's creating indirect awareness. If you have not affected somebody close to them, they think it does not exist. But the government has been able to put a structure in place that does not allow them exercise their, inalienable freedom that they used to think is theirs. So these are all components of pushing this campaign to our people.
Okay.
And I think it's paying off.
Okay, great. Secondly, I did tell you I was going to ask you. I was going to ask for your thoughts on two matters. Secondly, what tips do you have for patients and families that are experiencing what you experienced just a couple of weeks back? I mean, we're having more cases on our end each day, and which means more families will just be experiencing or will be experiencing what your family experienced a couple of weeks back. What tips do you have for such families?
Yeah, well, what I'm going to first of all share with you works. I don't know how I got in contact with this tracking app. There's a tracking app that I found myself able to grab when I was in the United Kingdom, and I've tried to share it with the committee on the task force on COVID-19 in our state, and I'm sure they can transmit it to other ones at the national level and other states. The tracking app will enable you to, when those questions are answered, you will know your risk factor, your percentage of risk factor, whether you should go for a test. It's like self-screening. So that is one way of pushing people to know that they need to know their status. People need to know their status. They need to, when you are sick, you don't have, in fact, it is not even, when you are sick, in most cases, when the symptom manifests, it's already too late. Otherwise, people would have shared from that virus. So it is important that while you are yet talking at this moment, it can never be tomorrow. It is it has to be now. Find out what is your status. So anything you can do to understand your status will help you. Anything you can do to understand, to know your status, will help you. So it's an individual thing.
Mr. Speaker, I actually meant for people who already know their status and who are already like those in the isolation centers and families who have patients there. I mean, what tip do you have for them on how best to cope in such a time like this?
Well, I mentioned to you that we must de-emphasize the issue of, I'm not going to be talking to the people on a center.
Indeed, you did. Yes, indeed.
I'm going to be talking about people that either you are either positive or you are negative.
Okay.
So if your ward, if your family member have been tested positive and is undergoing treatment, you know that you have a duty to test yourself. Okay. Test yourself to know your status. For one reason, if you know your status, you go into treatment immediately.
Okay.
If you are, that is if you are positive. If you are not positive, it makes you more conscious. At least you know yourself from that point, and how not to contact it is obeying the social distance, applying the simple hygiene, make sure you are masked at all times, and suspect every other person, even the air that you breathe can have it. Once you touch a metal, once you touch a plastic, once you have unfortunately touch any kind of object, including individual, you need to wash off your hand immediately.
But just before I let you go, let me ask you this, and I'll need your response in just about 10 or 20 seconds, if that's possible. You're a tested soldier. You've gone to the battleground. You've fought. You've conquered. And we would like to know and ask you this. Do you have any projects in mind in continuation of your fight against coronavirus in Nigeria?
Well, I hope you are not preempting me. This requires a research, a thought-out research. So I put together my friends that are intellectuals. They are already working at. It's not like a foundation, but it's going to be a project that we believe we can sit on this platform to apply whatever we have, whether material or intellectual advice to people. We continue to do that until this coronavirus is completely off our. And I'm praying God, because it was God that actually did my case. Because I noticed that from the UK to this point, God manifested himself in my life. So God's willing, we'll be able to put this project to reality very soon, and it will begin to assist us. I don't want to call it NGO, I don't want to call it whatever palliative, but it's going to be a structure that will be built on the foundation, the structural foundation that we will have to apply, that me and those that are the board of trustees and the beneficiary will have their rights directly from the documents that.
Right, Honorable Francis Okiye, Speaker, Edo State House of Assembly, thank you very much indeed for sharing with us your experience. We appreciate you and we wish you the very best.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Hopefully in the coming weeks we can bring you more stories and accounts of survivors here in Nigeria and of course abroad as well, as a way of demystifying claims that coronavirus infection is a death sentence. Moving forward, my next guest speaks in reaction to the continuing lockdown of states, which in itself is a countermeasure against further spread of the virus in Nigeria. But then you will recall that President Muhammadu Buhari had not only directed the deployment of palliatives to those mostly affected by the lockdown, but has also directed relevant ministries and agencies to expand by 1 million the existing social investment register. Yuan Apere joins me now to discuss some of these issues. He is the National Coordinator, National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, domicile in the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. Welcome to Insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
I think we should begin with something most people are interested in. A lot of people, actually, we've got lots of calls and questions coming over the last couple of days asking this. How far has the expanded register as directed by Mr. President gone? How much work has been done to expand the register from 2.6 million households to 3.6 as directed by Mr. President?
The social register in itself, it's been daily updated as we speak, every day of the week. All the various state teams are in the field collecting data. The social register itself is a product of the state planning ministries who are responsible to working with their local government teams to raising the social register in the communities. What we do at the national level is to aggregate the state social registers into the national social register after a due process of quality assurance. So they are first state register. So if you go to every planning ministry in every state, you will find the state social register. Post Mr. President's directive to move the numbers forward, we have been working very closely with the state teams, and as at 27th of April, that will be a Sunday, the numbers were 3 million across 35 states and FCT. So prior to this that I was on air and we were on 2.6 million, we were in 34 states and the FCT. And at that time, we didn't have Ebonyi State on the register and we didn't have Ogun State. But as of today, we have Ebonyi State with their data from starting with their first 30% LGAs in the social register. Over 5,000 poor and vulnerable households in Ebonyi has joined the fray. So you have 3 million poor and vulnerable households on the social register as of 27th of April from 35 states and Abuja, that is 36, in 464 LGAs, 51,000 communities in those states. So it is a continuum. Today, tomorrow, the teams are still in the state, and also fueled by this pandemic and crisis, the teams are literally in the field every day. The data are coming in, collecting them, we're double checking them, doing our quality assurance the way we do, and we're updating the register by the minute.
Great, fantastic. Give us an idea of how much so you've gone in the deployment of palliatives to states and the kind of response you've gotten since you have officers on the field on a daily basis like you just alluded to. What kind of responses have you been getting from the field, and what states specifically? Give us a broad idea of how many number of states you've been able to deploy palliatives to according to the directive from the President.
Okay, by our mandate, NASCO, the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, is a body saddled with the responsibility of building the databases and managing the databases, the evidence emanating from these databases. As we interact with this, we design programs and we think through what necessary social intervention should be adequate in answering the challenges of the poor and vulnerable in the country. We do not manage implementation. We coordinate some of them. The palliatives as ongoing, it's under fully the leadership and directives of the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk. And because I'm also part of our team, I report to her and I sit on the table. I have an idea of what is going on. So the first set of palliatives that have been released that you see particularly as palliatives are it's food from the food reserve of the country and other sources where the federal government is being given. Particularly, the Honorable Minister has, under the directives of the President, issued out food rice in trucks to states. As of today, over 70% of the states have received their supplies. So she had directed Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja, where we had the first large exposure to the pandemic, received their consignment. And other states like Imo, Benue, Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Rivers, Katsina, Kebbi, Jigawa, Kano, and a host of other states are also receiving these trucks. Now, that is what has been happening. There are others that have been planned through the school feeding program for dry food rations to families with students of children of school age who were enjoying school feeding while they were in school from these public schools. That is also ongoing in terms of setting down the process and the procedures to get this food across to people. Of course, the moratorium that the president announced on those who have loans under the JIP or the market money or trader money, the 3 months moratorium has already been implemented under the directives of the Honorable Minister, and we get those reports. And then the other plans that are ongoing for palliatives are still, the process have been still fine-tuned, and sooner than later they will also go out.
You're the man in charge of data, so I'll take you back to the issue of data now. Yeah. And I'll ask you this. How difficult is it to collate and aggregate data from states in coming up with a register? If it took this long to get states like Ebonyi and Ogun State included in the National Social Register, is it so difficult to aggregate these figures and data and integrate them into the National Social Register?
Oh, thank you very much. So there is a process of engagement. We are a federation, so the federal government will not go directly to a state or to a local government or to a community to intervene. They will go through the federation, the federal system, and the structures therein as recognized by the Constitution. So when we were established in 2016 to start the business of collating and managing this data, we entered into a memorandum of understanding at the federal level with the state governments around the whole country, the 36 states and the federal capital, Abuja. And one of the requirements of that memorandum of understanding behoves on states to come up with certain minimum requirements. For instance, the state will have to establish an office under the Ministry of Planning. The state will then recruit competitively civil servants and post them fully to man the positions in the state operations and coordinating unit SUCO. And then the state government will also provide minimum furnishing to these offices, including equipment like laptops. Okay. Now, once that is done, we will then work with the state team now to establish certain parameters, like open a bank account that is fully under the management of that state unit. We will also meet with the state and the other relevant agencies of the state to determine the LGAs that will start working by using the poverty map of the country that maps local governments from the poor to the poorest. Okay. And then we agree with the state for this state A, here is the first 30% poorest local government. Once that is agreed, the state team will then engage with the local government. Again, you see, it's a tier system. You have the federal, the state, and the LGs. And the state themselves cannot just move into the communities and begin to collect data. They will have to use the structures of the local government. They will then go and recruit local government staff.
Okay.
And they will train this local government staff. They will give them the tablets that we give them, and then the local government staff will go and engage. Now, this process of engagement took some time. There are states that quickly got the state offices deployed, support to the state
so
team.
Invariably,
and
it's the subject of how keen these states are to be part of the process. That is what determines how
early they get in. Yes, that's what has been happening. So it is first. It's a huge state access. It's a state database. And so the state lashing onto this opportunity and providing the necessary structures and support to get it moving caused some of the delays that we had. I mean, there are some cases where the state will argue that they will not cite it under planning. They want it under a focal person, or they want it under a state governor's office, or they want it under a cabinet office, you know, and those kind of arguments and negotiations will take place, and we all agree that because it is a state asset and it is a database for planning and for implementation of programs, it pays more value to put it in the agency that is responsible for planning and for measuring development in the state.
I will interrupt you here and quickly and ask you this quickly. We're fast losing time. How does the data that you collate, does it factor variables and indices like who, or make projections rather, as to guarantee whether palliatives being deployed reach the target persons or households? I mean, does that data collate that much? Do you also factor that, look, we have to put certain variables in play to guarantee that if these of our units in charge of distribution does distribute, it will be guaranteed that yes, these households, these poor households, these middle income households would be the ones to get these relief materials?
Yes, of course. So there are loads of variables within the social register. Like I said, it's a huge database. So when we collect data from the poor and vulnerable household, who, by the way, are identified by the community. So the community sit round, and the community is divided into 3 groups: youth, women, and the male adult. Each of these groups will define for them what it's meant by poverty, and by that they will then identify the poor and vulnerable amongst them. Okay. This list of these 3 different groups will be collated and harmonized into one single list.
That is like the beginning of the process.
That's the beginning of the process.
Towards the end of the process where distribution comes into play.
Okay, so when you do that, we then go to the households who take information that includes the entire biodata of the entire family, the entire household. We also take welfare indicators that determine the degree of wealthiness of a family. So you take information around the nature of the household, the premises, the assets that the family owns, and all of that. But also, we also take geo coordinates of this household. Okay. So you can pinpoint exactly with the right equipment where each household is located on the social register. That's on one end.
We're out of time, but I'll ask you this before I let you go. I'm sure I'll ask you 2 questions in quick succession. I would like for you to attempt to answer them also very quickly, if that's possible. Are you concerned with insinuations from certain quarters that certain aspects or sections of this country are exempted from being captured in the social register? If that's true or not, you'd respond to that. And another question, very quickly too, is this. I'm sure you've seen videos emanating. We have not been able to independently verify some of these videos where relief materials have been hijacked by hoodlums and miscreants, sometimes by relief materials from private donors. Are you concerned about that as well? And is there a way or something you can do to work out a modality on how private donors can, for instance, distribute relief materials? Very quickly.
Yeah, I'm concerned. As someone that sits here, I'm really concerned. First, on the fact that we have had feedback of lopsidedness in the data collected between states. I'm concerned, and I take it as a feedback. But the explanation is simply that it's a process, and it depending on how proactive a state is in providing support and answering the side of their bargain in the MOU, their information come on the data set. So we are concerned about that. We are looking at it. We are also trying to push out there the process for the understanding of Nigerians, how this is being developed. So yes, we are concerned. And we appreciate the feedback that is coming, because it's a process. It's in public domain. The more feedback we get, the more we strengthen the process. On the second basis of the palliative, we are also concerned that this palliative meant for the poor and vulnerable is being hijacked by hoodlums who not necessarily are not necessarily hungry, but there are criminal elements that are taking advantage of this. And the federal government and the president is very concerned about this, and he's strengthening it. He's charging the security agencies to provide more securities to these trucks that are taking food to the people who really, really need this food, and so that it's not being hijacked. So the federal government on one hand is doing their best to see that the food reach the poor and vulnerable.
Thank you so much for coming on the program. It's been quite enlightening speaking with you. We have been speaking with Mr. Yua Apere. He is the National Coordinator, National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, domicile in the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. Up next is the Media Review segment with Elizabeth Omorui.
Mr. Iliewo Kikiwo, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
All right, well, the conversation is on globally. So tell me, what role has the social media been playing in containing COVID-19?
Well, as you know, the entire world is on lockdown at the moment. Many people cannot traditionally access information the way they have been before. And so we've had to rely on the use of social media, to get first-hand information. I also understand the fact that it has its own challenges, and a lot of people have been sharing fake news in recent time. It's one of the major issues we have against the fight against COVID-19. But by and large, social media has played a very critical role. In Nigeria as of today, everybody did not sleep until 12 midnight, so they could get the update from the NCDC,
Okay.
which has actually adopted the use of social media, to communicate critical information as regards the number of cases we have in Nigeria by social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook and other verified platforms.
Okay. All right, so
has played a very critical role.
all right, so do you feel that some of the information on social media are really helping as we grapple with the disease?
Of course, it is.
Okay.
As much as I identify the fact that fake news is one of the things we've been battling with as regards social media, but it's also a tool for the authorities to disseminate very critical information. So the updates we've been getting on how to protect ourselves from contracting coronavirus has basically been from social media. We follow verified Twitter handles of authorities, health authorities, the World Health Organization, Federal Ministry of Health, and other relevant government agencies, to get updates on how to prevent coronavirus. And of course, in case you're unfortunate, to have contracted the disease, what to do, precisely where to go to, numbers to call, the precautions to take, everything can be first from the social media. And so, in fact, we've seen increase in the use of social media since the lockdown began. App News.com reports that the use of social media has increased with over 70% across the world.
Okay.
In fact, in Nigeria, we've seen that websites like Zoom.com, Facebook, and all of those social media platforms you use in communicating with people has had a spike in its usage. Interestingly, Zoom.us, which is a popular platform used for meetings and all that,
Okay.
plans to 120 in the past 3 weeks.
All right, Mr. Ilewo, I would like to ask you this.
Before now.
All right, since you are an influencer in the social media space, all right, now most people just share certain information, but how real are they? Don't you think some of this information, messages we have around are just trying to frustrate the efforts of the government?
Well, not necessarily. Sometimes a lot of people share news when they for example, on WhatsApp, when people receive podcasts on things to do when it catch coronavirus, some people feel that they are actually helping their family members and friends, and so they begin to report. So what we've always advised as a company is that before you forward any message, make sure you verify it. When you receive a message on what to do when you catch coronavirus, for example, all you need to do is to go on Google and then search those keywords. What to do? Do I use to sow leaf? Do I use to sow vein, to cure coronavirus? And once those information are not on verified platforms, on very, very popular verified platforms, then you shouldn't ignore that message. It's most likely that message is a fake news. And so sometimes it's not because people actually want to cause the damage, but they unknowingly will just publish or broadcast or share messages that are incorrect. So what we advise people as an organization is that before you forward any message, before you confirm before you accept any message to be true and then start sharing with your friends, make sure you double check with credible sources.
All right. Let me ask you this before I let you go. Sometimes people post videos that entertain us on the social media, and then now some share some messages that are not real, that are misleading. So how can we control what we have on the social media? Is it possible that we control what we have on the social media?
Well, interestingly, we find ourselves in a country where you respect the rights of people to their opinions and the right to share whatever it is they want to share on social media. We are not in some other countries where the usage of internet is strictly we are not in countries where the usage of social media is restricted. So people are likely to share whatever it is they want to share. And then the owners don't lie on us, especially since the government has not yet passed prohibition of the use of social media and all that. So the owners is on us to believe only what the health authorities and the government are saying to us. I know people all over don't like to believe the government, but in this instance, we need to believe the government and the government alone. I know that there have been very popular people, pastors that we respect, musicians, entertainers and all that, who are saying things that are not scientific, who are saying things that are incorrect. But I want to beg us that no matter what the influence they hold on us, let us trust at this point the government and the government alone. They are the ones who can tell us precisely how we can deal with this virus. And let us remove anything, any unverified message, a popular person or an entertainer or a pastor or an imam or whoever it is that holds so much influence on us. Let us ignore what they are saying for now. And let us just trust the professionals in this.
All right. I want to thank you so much for your time. Kikiowo, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And that's it on the Media Review segment this week.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Elizabeth?
Please don't forget COVID-19 is real. Please stay safe.
Do stay safe until we come your way. Same time next week. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week.
Today, the cessation of movement, physical distancing measures, and the prohibition of mass gatherings remain the most efficient and effective way of reducing the transmission of the virus. By sustaining these measures, combined with extensive testing and contact tracing, we can take control and limit the spread of the disease.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online. Or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
There is a lot of fake news and report.